The storm clouds rolled over the city on a dull Thursday morning, and the world felt strangely heavy, as if something unseen was waiting to happen. Inside a crowded bus station where people rushed past one another without lifting their eyes, a single dad named Daniel stood with his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. He was exhausted from a 12-hour night shift, still wearing the faded blue uniform from the warehouse where he worked. His mind was on bills, on overdue rent, on the growing fear that he wasn't providing enough for his child. But all those worries dissolved for a moment when he noticed two small figures sitting on a bench near the far wall, two identical twins, barely 8 years old, with tangled hair, oversized clothes, and backpacks that looked older than they were. They sat close together, hands signing rapidly, eyes searching for someone, anyone. But every passerby either ignored them or stepped around them like they weren't even there. And in that heartbreaking moment, Daniel realized the truth: the twins were deaf. They were lost, and they were alone. If you believe kindness still matters in this world, if you believe a single moment can change a life, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whispers of Kindness. Let's spread stories that make the world softer. Daniel watched as the twins flinched each time someone walked too close. One of them, later he would learn her name was Emma, held a crumpled paper in her hand, probably an address, trying to show it to anyone who might help. But no one stopped long enough to understand. People were too busy, too impatient, too uninterested in a pair of frightened deaf children who couldn't speak their language. A wave of protectiveness washed over Daniel, the same instinct that kept him going through nights of barely sleeping and days of endless work. He knew what it felt like to be invisible, to feel like the world could swallow you whole without noticing. He squeezed Lily's hand gently, and when she followed his line of sight to the twins, she tugged urgently on his sleeve, her eyes wide with concern. Daniel didn't hesitate. Despite the ache in his bones, despite the weight of unpaid bills in his pocket, he walked toward the twins, knelt to their level, and signed the simple word, "Hello." What happened next would change all of their lives in ways none of them could foresee. The instant his hands moved, the twins froze. Their eyes widened, first in confusion, then in a kind of desperate hope that shimmered like light breaking through fog. Their little fingers fluttered uncertainly, as if they weren't sure he had really meant to speak their language. Daniel repeated the sign, slower this time, a warm smile on his face. Both children burst into tears, not loud sobs, but shuddering, silent cries that made his chest tighten. Lily, despite being only 6, stepped closer and gently offered them part of the muffin they had been sharing. The twins accepted it hesitantly, exchanging a quick conversation in sign that Daniel understood more than enough of. They couldn't find the woman who was supposed to pick them up. They didn't know where they were. They had been sitting there for hours. Daniel's mind raced as they signed broken, panicked explanations. They had traveled on a bus from a foster home 2 towns away, meant to meet a social worker at this station. But something had gone wrong. Someone didn't show up, someone didn't communicate clearly, someone forgot to consider the needs of 2 deaf little girls. The world had failed them, and no one even looked back. Daniel swallowed hard, anger and sadness mingling. He knew too much about systems that failed children. He knew too much about being overlooked. He gently asked for the paper they held. He read the address, an office building 10 minutes away. He signed that he would take them. Emma and her twin sister, Eva, hesitated, not because they didn't trust him, but because they were still overwhelmed by the sudden kindness. Finally they nodded, their small shoulders relaxing for the first time that day. Daniel reached for their backpacks and carried them along with Lily's hand in his own, leading all 3 children toward a safer place. The walk was slow. The twins stuck close to him and Lily, their steps careful and tiny. The city around them kept rushing. Cars honked, people shouted into phones, but within that noise, Daniel created a small bubble of calm where hands spoke more gently than voices. He asked their ages, their favorite things, whether they were hungry. Their faces lit up when he signed that he had learned sign language years ago because his late sister had been deaf. It stunned them. Adults didn't usually make that kind of effort. To know someone like this existed, someone who saw them, broke something open inside them. When they reached the building, it was locked. Lights off. No one inside. Daniel felt rage simmer in his chest. How could anyone leave 2 vulnerable children alone like that? He signed to the twins that he would call for help. His phone barely had battery, but he contacted the foster system emergency line. 40 minutes passed with no one answering. Rain began to fall in thin sheets, and the twins huddled under his jacket as he held it above them. Lily pressed close to him, whispering that they could take the girls home with them. The idea scared him. He barely made enough for himself and Lily. Their apartment was tiny, the kitchen light flickered, and sometimes he skipped meals so Lily wouldn't. How could he take 2 more children, even temporarily? But watching the twins' shoulders shake with cold, their eyes looking up at him with absolute trust, Daniel knew he didn't have a choice. Kindness wasn't something you did only when it was convenient. It was something you chose, even when it cost you. He signed that they would go to his home for now, just for the night. To his surprise, instead of fear, he saw relief in their faces. Lily walked between them, holding their hands tightly, as if she'd known them her entire life. Their apartment was small but warm. The moment they entered, the twins seemed unsure how to exist in someone else's space. They removed their shoes timidly, clutching their backpacks like shields. Daniel signed that they were safe, that they could rest, that they could eat. He cooked simple food, rice, eggs, and vegetables, with the last ingredients he had, even though it meant he wouldn't have enough for tomorrow. But seeing the twins eat with such gratitude made every sacrifice worthwhile. That night, after the girls fell asleep on Lily's bed with her tucked between them, Daniel sat at the small table and ran his hands over his face. What was he doing? He was a single dad barely holding on. He didn't have time, money, or answers. But he also knew he couldn't turn away from children who had been ignored their whole lives. He spent half the night researching foster protocols, emergency numbers, and rights. Finally he reached someone who promised to send a worker in the morning. He slept for only an hour before his alarm rang. Morning sunlight spilled across the floor. Lily was drawing with the twins, all 3 giggling silently in the soft language of hands and smiles. The sight hit him like a wave. How quickly children bonded when given safety. How naturally they understood love. When the social worker arrived, she seemed hurried, dismissive. She barely glanced at the twins before saying they would be taken to a temporary shelter. The twins froze, fear exploding in their eyes. They clung to Daniel's shirt, shaking their heads. The worker insisted it was protocol. Daniel felt something inside him ignite. He stood tall, exhausted but unbreakable, and signed to the twins that he would not let them be taken somewhere unsafe. He told the worker that the system had already failed them once and he would not allow a repeat. This time, he didn't just speak with his voice. He spoke with conviction. He demanded a supervisor. He documented everything. He brought up his background learning sign, his clean record, his stable, though small, home. Finally, reluctantly, the social worker agreed to file an emergency foster application, but warned it was unlikely he'd qualify. Yet within a week, the impossible happened. A representative visited, saw the connection between him, Lily, and the twins. Saw the gentle way he communicated. Saw how the girls bloomed under his care, drawing pictures, sleeping through the night, eating meals with smiles instead of fear. Saw how Lily proudly signed the little phrases Daniel had taught her. The representative approved temporary placement. Weeks passed, then months. Daniel worked extra shifts. Neighbors noticed and quietly offered help, meals, clothes, old toys. The twins slowly healed. They learned trust. They learned what it felt like to belong to a family. And one evening, at a small wooden table filled with mismatched plates, the twins signed 3 words that made Daniel's throat tighten so hard he couldn't speak. Our dad now. He didn't know what the future held. But he knew his answer. He signed, yes, if you want me, always. From that day on, the little apartment that once felt too small became a home overflowing with laughter, silent laughter, yes, but laughter all the same. Daniel had gone from a tired, struggling single father to a man raising 3 children, bound together not by blood but by a tenderness that changed them all. And one day, he looked back at that bus station memory, the moment everyone ignored 2 frightened deaf twins, realizing that kindness doesn't just save others. Sometimes it saves you too. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whispers of Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. Before this story ends, here is a special request. Please comment below. Kindness lives in small moments. Your comment helps the video spread love and light.